Charles Manson, Lawrence Bittaker, John Gacy, and Ed Kemper, all guilty of heinous crimes, vicious rapes, murders, and kidnappings. But what led these people to do such violent things? Growing up, John Gacy suffered the wrath of an alcoholic father who never tried to hide his disappointment in his son. He would call him dumb, stupid, and a sissy. Occasionally, John Sr. would even throw his son across the room. Gacy wanted desperately to impress his father, so he held multiple jobs, including being a Democratic politician and dressing up as Pogo the Clown at kids' parties and charity events. Amid these careers, Gacy was found accused of raping and murdering young boys. While in custody, John tried to blame his murderous acts on his alter ego he called Jack. He later abandoned this claim and said the bodies must have been planted in his house while he was gone. These claims were not believed, and he remained in custody. While on death row, Gacy would try to sell paintings he did of disturbing scenes, such as grinning skulls and sad-faced clowns. All appeals were rejected, and Gacy was executed by lethal injection in May 1994. Substitute Kathleen Maddox as No-Name Maddox. Charles Manson's last name was a guess as to which lover was his father. Manson's mother went to prison for robbery for 5 years when he was younger, so Charles was sent to live with his very religious aunt and her sadistic husband. His uncle forced him to wear girls' clothes on his first day of school and called him a sissy in an attempt to get him to act like a man. When his mother was released from prison, she didn't want Charles, so he took to living on the streets. He had a track record of truancy and petty theft charges as a teen. Later in life, Manson was tested to have an IQ of 121 and was a self-proclaimed Scientologist. In the 60s, Charles started attracting a following of young adults that viewed him as a father figure and a religious preacher. Manson soon became obsessed with death and thought the Beatles song Helter Skelter was predicting a race war. In 1968, several of his family members began the violent murders, which led to a bad chain of events. Manson began directing the murders, and even once he was arrested for arson, his cult following kept up the acts. In March 1974, Manson was diagnosed as an acute psychotic. He was charged with 7 counts of murder and died from cardiac arrest from colon cancer in 2017. Lawrence Bittaker was the unwanted child of a couple who decided not to have kids and immediately placed him in an orphanage, but he was quickly adopted thereafter. He committed many petty thefts as a teen and admits they were attempts to compensate for the lack of love he received from his parents. Lawrence had a reported IQ of 138, but dropped out of high school. Shortly after, he was arrested for a hit and run, and his adoptive family abandoned him upon release. Later in life, Bittaker made a plan to kidnap, rape, and murder teenage girls for fun. His weapons of choice included ice picks, screwdrivers, and pliers. Bittaker is known for being extremely cruel and disturbing. He denied everything in court, but in March 1981, he received a death sentence, and he is still on death row today. Ed Kemper grew up with an abusive mother who said he was too much like his father and no woman would ever love him. As a boy, he would kill his pets and play an electric chair game with his sisters. He was not good at expressing his feelings and showed early signs of necrophilia. Eventually, he ran away to live with his father, who then sent Ed to his paternal grandparents. At the age of 15, he murdered his grandmother, who he thought was too controlling, then killed his grandfather so that he would not find out. Kemper then turned to picking up female hitchhikers, murdering them, then violating the bodies. He finished his killing spree by murdering his own mother and her best friend. When in custody, psychiatrists deemed Kemper completely sane. Standing 6'9", weighing over 300 pounds, and having an IQ of 145, Ed appears to be intimidating, but he remains a model prisoner. When on trial, Kemper asked to have death by torture, but instead received life in prison. He is happily living without parole in the California Medical Facility today. So looking at all these men, you can see some similarities. They didn't have the best childhoods, possible mental illness. They may have just all taken it out in the same way. So what exactly causes a person to go to such extreme lengths to kill another human? That's a question that may go unanswered for quite some time. Is the want to murder instilled at birth, or developed with time? Does the impact of society increase the likelihood of a reign of terror? 1960 to 1970 was a time very abundant with serial killers. Was this due to a lack of knowledge about mental health? Why are 85% of serial killers male, but only 15% female? There are many questions that remain unanswered regarding the logistics behind the making of a killer, and government forces like the FBI are working to find ways to detect and hopefully prevent future killers. But as for what causes the want to kill, this case remains unsolved.